Welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk, and I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. We're excited to bring you a very special guest today, Mr. Mike Boylan
Yep.
with Mike's Weather Page.
Hello.
So you are an official weather nerd. Is it okay if I call you that?
Yeah, a lot of folks call me a weather
Okay.
nerd.
I mean that in the most respectful way. I think it's super fascinating. I was checking out some of your stuff, and of course, Pat George booked you for our show, and I'm really excited to have you here. So tell me a little bit about your background. You were saying how you kind of transitioned into weather full time 5 years ago and made it this big thing. So how'd you get here? What's your background?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. Never dreamed in a million years I'd be doing what I'm doing today. I went to USF for marketing.
Okay.
I was in love with marketing and website design. And 2004 came around, and I was learning HTML at the time. And we had 4 hurricanes that year. We had Hurricane Charlie come in Tampa.
Oh, that was a big year.
Yeah, it was a
Before.
big year.
Yes.
No one knew about hurricanes back then. And I got addicted to spaghetti models. I got addicted to like all the graphics, and I couldn't ever find them day to day. Google really wasn't a thing back then. So I was learning a website design. I'm like, I'm gonna build me a website so I have a place to put all my graphics that I love, for me. And I called it Mike's Weather Page. I was like, that's so ingenious, Mike's Weather Page. And it was only for friends and family. And for about 2 years, it was basically unknown. It was hidden off of another domain that I had. And it just slowly, like, just people found it. They finally, used website searches and came across it and word of mouth. And next thing you know, it kind of grew. And then we got Facebook in like 2009. And that really got going once social media came around.
I found him by accident on YouTube one day.
Yep.
And I said, wait a minute, this guy is just like the guy next door talking over the fence.
Yeah.
But he knows everything about the wind patterns and everything.
Tell me about that. Like, how did the fascination start with like the spaghetti models and the wind patterns and all the stuff that Pat's saying? And then how did you get like educated on that? Because not everybody knows stuff like that.
No, I didn't know anything. I mean, the first email that I got that I was so excited was some guys that worked at NASA, and they wanted me to include a jet stream map. And they're like, Mike, all weather is controlled by the jet stream. And hell, I didn't know what it meant. I'm like, I didn't even know what a jet stream was, And I put it on there. And over the years, I just became, just addicted to weather and like wanted to
Were you
learn.
fascinated? Like, NASA, is this real? The
Oh, I did.
NASA
Oh, yeah.
email
I
me?
remember calling mom and dad. I'm like, I just got an email from guys that work at NOAA, NASA, and
Was there a part of you thought, okay, this might be fake?
no, because it was a legit link,
was,
and then I think I started realizing then, wow, people are liking the site. So I started throwing links, and I kind of felt like it was a public website. People were telling me, hey, you should put this on here, put this on here, put this on there. And it kind of just grew over time.
So you just basically filled a need, right, of what people are telling you they want.
They wanted a one-stop shop. They wanted a simple page with spaghetti models and National Hurricane Center graphics. And that's what it was for the longest time. And then social media came around, and it was like a 180 opposite. It was people wanting me to almost show them the graphics and talk about the graphics. And, it was like the website was like your do-it-yourself place to go. And then the social media was more like, I'm telling them like, hey, here's the latest models. People were just starving for that kind of, updated information.
Right.
And then the mingling, the social aspect of people commenting,
Well, I think the challenge is too, like when there's a storm that's coming in and you're watching some of the, the regular major storm pages, the local news channels, they do that only at certain times. And I think as a society, we've grown to be an on-demand culture, and people want it when they want it. They don't want to have to wait until 5:20 or whatever time,
Totally.
the local news channel decides they want to air it.
Correct. And one thing that I noticed was, local meteorologists get 3 minutes. And like you said, I think folks liked a lot of conversation.
Right.
I would do it.
And they don't want to hear the same thing at the next update. They want something a little new.
Well, they want to see stuff that they can't always show on TV. I mean, there's only so much you can show on TV as far as time.
Yeah.
And
anything in the TV and the radio space, we're blessed to have our podcast studio that we're building in, but we did live radio for years, and it is a hard, fast clock. And when you have to take a break, you got to take a break. When you have that time limit, you got to fit a lot into that 3-minute span.
Yeah, and you still got to talk about local weather and temperatures and beach temperatures, and the wake-up forecast. So, yeah, that was definitely a niche that I filled, I think, was that, 1 hour. I would do a live video for an hour. I still do every day. And people turn to that.
So when you are in a day like this, right, where it's calm, we're out of hurricane season, nothing crazy is going on. What's your hour video about? What do you
There's
post?
still weather. It's crazy. I always get a little anxious thinking there's nothing, but then there's always something. People, I went storm chasing the other day. I call it storm chasing. I was snow chasing up in the Gatlinburg area, and people rode along with me. They love that adventure. There's tornadoes all the time. There's spring
Oh yeah.
weather. There's cold fronts we're talking. So there's
My late husband and I were on the Ober slopes,
yes.
Ober Gatlinburg, and they evacuated the slopes because tornadoes were coming
Oh.
through. We were literally on that slope skiing, and they're like, "You guys got to go. You got to go."
Yeah, I believe it.
And
No.
it was, you don't think about that kind of stuff, not living in that area, but definitely happens.
Yeah, and I think what's helped me is I've realized that I have an audience outside of Florida, so it still engages me to talk about tornadoes in Gatlinburg or wildfires out west or
Right.
nor'easters, especially blizzards. So yeah, there's always something. I just don't, I cut it back to Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, mainly because I don't want to be like a robot and talk about the same stuff.
Right.
But
We want to keep it fresh and fun and exciting.
Yep.
Because when you're exciting, your listeners and people watching you also find it exciting.
Sure.
Where if you get bored and you're doing it every day, people will feel that.
Yeah, and 90% of my audience, I think, is summertime hurricane folks. I mean, there's a culture of tracking hurricanes. I don't
Right.
know if it's a part of living in Florida. Obviously, other states deal with hurricanes, but Floridians, I don't want to say love hurricane season, but they are attracted to hurricane season, good and bad.
Well, I'll tell you why. Like being the non-weather nerd, just like the generic real estate brokers, like run around doing her thing, right? Obviously, stuff stops if we have a storm that comes in. But aside from that, I think the reason why, and this is coming from someone I don't watch TV, right? So if a storm is to come in, I am kind of glued to the social stuff or whatever the news. I get bored with the news because I feel like they show the same thing over and over again, and it's just becomes monotonous. But when I think about like why people are fascinated with it, it's so unpredictable. You have all these models, which we'll talk about in a minute. But outside of it being super unpredictable, as residents, we have to be prepared because you don't know what direction it's going to go. They kind of give you like this general area in the cone, like days and days and days in advance, but you have a lot of time to prepare and watch this. As it gets closer, if it looks like it's going to come to your area, everything's going to be wiped out. There's no generators in the store. There's no water. There's no bread. Like all the basic stuff flies off the shelf. So I think that's why people watch it, because they're watching to see, okay, do I need to go stock up on this stuff? Do I not? And there's some areas that are like, should I evacuate? Should I not evacuate? And a lot of times people don't decide that until you get much closer. You don't want to wait till it's too late. But on the same token, you don't want to, leave too early if you don't need to.
Well, yeah, you just hit the nail on the head in a lot of aspects. I mean, I think with me rambling so much with my storm chasing experience and now and seeing what the impacts are, you could talk about the impacts, but when you've seen the impacts, I think it comes across a little bit better to the folks listening. And I always think with the folks that watch me is they make up their own mind and their own decisions. Like they're not coming to me to tell them. I put as much data out there, possibilities out there. And the people I found like that. They're like, they want to be in tune of, wow, this could be here Wednesday. We could have this kind of surge. We could have this kind of rain. It's just an awareness.
And it can change on a dime. Like overnight, you can go to bed and wake up and have a completely different direction. And that happened to a girlfriend of mine 2 or 3 years ago with this. I think it's been 3 years ago, maybe now. You would know better than me. The one that was supposed to come directly to Pinellas County and then end up going south and hitting closer like Punta Gorda area. Ian. So they vacated for that particular storm because it was supposed to be a direct hit. They're in Madeira Beach, and they stayed in one of our mutual friends' Airbnb. Well, they had already evacuated a lot of that area because they were saying it may come this way. It was still supposed to come towards Tampa. Well, they stayed there, and they said the police are running everybody out. So if you want to stay here, just ignore it. Well, long story short, the storm did end up turning, and it ended up being a direct hit on that area, and essentially. Our mutual friend whose place she stayed in came with the pickup truck to get them out because they could not have, their cars were totaled. They got completely flooded. And here they were leaving where they thought the storm was going to hit, and they went right to the area where it hit. So it's one of those things like sometimes you're not sleeping. And I know you're not sleeping reporting it, but even watching it.
Yeah, well, Floridians have learned that because when we had Charlie, most folks went to Orlando, and Charlie hit Orlando as a Cat 1.
Worse, yeah.
Yeah, so there's really, us being in a peninsula, it's tricky. You don't know really where to go, and I think Irma taught that with the state, because both sides of the state evacuated with Irma, and people were running out of gas on the interstates. They didn't know where they're going to go. They didn't have prescriptions, pets. Like we've learned, I think we've evolved really well in Florida as far as when to evacuate, why to evacuate, what to take.
Yeah.
And now the state of Florida, they're telling everybody, you evacuate tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, because really staying away from the water, that's really, 80-90% of all your hurricane deaths are water.
Are we going to get another hurricane before the end of this season?
I don't think so. We're late November.
If you were gambling, I would bet it all.
The crazy part is that, obviously their cars flooded. It was completely dark down there. I ended up calling them to check on them because I didn't know they had left. I thought they were still in Madeira Beach. Something told me just to call them and check on them. They're like, oh no, we're down here. We're stuck. Our cars are flooded. We've got the cats. It's like her husband and their kid. And I said, I don't know if I can come get you. I will try, because I drive an electric car, and the maps are real time. So when you're looking at it, you can tell the superchargers that are out. Those are the ones that were underwater, totally like dead. So the farthest one south was like Sarasota. And I was like, I don't know if I can make it. I'm going to have to get there, probably charge to 100%, which is exactly what happened, and see if I have enough juice to come full circle. And if I can, I'm not going to be able to come. So I ended up getting them early. There was power trucks everywhere. It was totally dark. Everything was just dark everywhere. And essentially the I-75 ended up collapsing the next day. I'd already picked them up and came back, and then I wouldn't have even been able to go the next day. I don't know if you remember that. You probably were right there seeing it. Yeah.
I'm interested I've been in radio a long time, and I'm interested in your day from the time you get up, whatever days you said, Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays.
Yeah.
What is your day? I mean, you got to get everything ready. How long does that take?
Well,
and what is a whole day like?
Yeah, hurricane season, and pretty much this season now, but let's say our peak time is hurricane season. Really, it's kind of going to bed the night before, knowing what you're looking for when you wake up. So the first thing I do is check the latest National Hurricane Center update at 5. I'll look at the overnight Euro, the GFS models, because they run overnight around midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. So I kind of get a game plan of where the trend has been. And then basically I'll get up, do your thing, and get on the desk and start posting about 6 in the morning. I found if I post too early, the engagement's not there. Most people don't wake up that early. So I usually in the game, you get a game plan of what is happening and what I think is important to post. It might be new spaghetti models, talk about a trend change overnight, or if we're talking, let's say we had a hurricane coming to Tampa, for example. Obviously there's panic about Tampa, so I feel like the next morning I'll say, all right, here's the trends. Yes, we're still seeing that, or here's maybe where we're seeing things shifting a little bit, or here's the latest strengths. So I kind of cover the latest intensity trends, the spaghetti models, and basically just a lot of data. I mean, folks like timing, they like winds, they like rain impacts, storm impacts, speed. And then go, do my show in the morning. Usually it's an hour long, and I'll break down every model. There's so many models and ensembles, and people love it. I mean, I like it too.
And you have to probably study and get that data from a lot of places before you even report it and break it down and explain it.
Yeah, and I think what if there was a success for what I do, I live in that moment. So like I already know. It's like you're educating yourself,
right?
So when you speak, you almost have to know the data without looking at the data. Like you almost have to become the forecast yourself rather than reading the forecast.
So the spaghetti models, I'm curious about that because everybody is familiar with the spaghetti models, like all these different colors on the graph, and it's pointing every different direction. Some of them kind of zero in, I think, as the storm gets closer.
Right.
But how many different models are there?
And which ones are more accurate than the others?
That was the next question.
Well, so let's use Ian, for example. So Ian, I have a weird style when I forecast. Like there are models some years that are better than others, and there's some reasons that no one can even explain. Like the GFS, for example, that's our American model. It's had a lot of rough years, but it is used
in terms of accuracy.
Oh, accuracy, yeah. And you get this gut feeling at the start of the season who's performing and who's not performing, and so you tend to lean on more ones than the other. And so Ian kept everybody on the edge of their seat because it looked like at one time it was going to go to the Panhandle, and that cone, the Fort Myers was always on that edge. Like the cone is where the eye could go, but most people, including myself, you kind of get fixed on that center line and you see it, west of Tampa, and that's where you think it's going to go. But the GFS that year was so bad. The Euro is really the king, and there's others in the UK and Canadian, and there's a German model, and now we have Google AI. AI models are coming to the scene.
That's going to get fascinating to see how that changes things.
Yes, and but I had a gut that year. I knew that there's something called ensembles, which are your main Euro has 51 little brains that make up the main run, and you can kind of see the direction of all those little brains before maybe the main run. And there was always this trend to the west coast of Florida. And that year alone, we had a lot of cold fronts coming down. So you kind of had that gut feeling like, hey, it's going to turn, and it did turn. But when it turned, it caught people off guard because it was 2 days earlier. And it was now not a hurricane at the Panhandle. It was a major hurricane on Wednesday. So a lot of folks lost their lives during Ian, which I can't, we shouldn't be losing lives at this day and age,
right.
With forecasting. But so that's kind of it. I mean, there's a lot of people in Fort Myers said that they luckily watched my forecast and they knew that there was a good chance this was going to actually turn towards Central Florida. Because the one time it was going to hit the Panhandle.
That's a pretty big spread. Like that's
2 days
hundreds
before.
Of miles apart.
Yeah, my daughter, I'll never forget Saturday when she was doing homecoming pictures, and I overheard somebody walking by. Oh, the cone, it just shifted to the west, to Tampa. And at first I'm thinking, well, that's even worse because of what we learned with Helene. I'm like, we still don't want that thing to skirt past Tampa.
Right.
But then I'm also thinking, no, it's not. That's because the GFS was skewing the models that year. And it made the cone wider, and they had to take into account the GFS. But it was so wrong. It was once they took the GFS out, everything went right towards Fort Myers. So that's kind of where spaghetti models can tell you a lot because they tell you trends. I can spot trends days in advance. You'll start to see the thinking of the majority. And
how many are there? Because I just remember seeing so many colors.
There's 20 plus.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's Google AI. This last year came out, and it's fascinating. It's called DeepMind.
I was going to ask you about that. How has AI changed it? What are you seeing as it relates to weather?
Well, this Google AI last year with Milton, as it was coming to the west coast of Florida, it was the best.
Really?
Yep. And this season, it's been very accurate.
Wow.
What happened this year?
This year was a phenomenon. So remember, I was saying every year something happens. Like, so Irma, real quick, I always, you talk about Irma because that year we had a very strong Bermuda high. And if anybody lives in Florida, they know we have something called a Bermuda high. And that year, that Bermuda high was strong. So
what does that mean? Can you
well,
break that
Bermuda
down?
high is this high pressure area that's over the Atlantic. And when you have a big high pressure area, no storms can go around this high pressure. So it shoves systems farther to the west and into the Atlantic, into the Caribbean. So some of the early modeling with Irma was going to have it turn east of Florida. But that year we had a really strong high, and it kept building, and it kept shoving Irma farther to the west, and it ended up going to the west side of Florida. The year of this year is the same as Ian 22. We had cold fronts coming down, and when we have cold fronts, the Bermuda high is non-existent because cold fronts penetrate this Bermuda high and it prevents this blocking pattern. So we started getting cold fronts in August, which was unheard of. And anybody who's followed weather, they just sat right off the Atlantic coast. We had them in August and September, and people up there were telling me they couldn't believe how cool it was, how dry it was. But it also prevented that high pressure to build in that normally is there, August and September. And if you know, every storm this season curved. Like all these, we had 3 major Cat 5s and a Cat 4, and they've all curved way east of the U.S. And that's because there was no high pressure to block these systems, so they curved early.
What would happen right now with the weather we've had in the last couple of weeks if this was 2 months ago?
Well, right now we do have a high pressure over us, which would have allowed something in the Caribbean to come up around us. Florida, we had a really odd pattern. Like we're in a drought right now on our side of the state. In the East Coast has had a lot of rain, and that's because of this shifting of this high. So it saved us this year. Just nothing. This is the first time there hasn't been a hurricane in the Gulf, I think, since 20 years.
I think a lot of them were like out off in the Atlantic.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, they all curved.
It was interesting. I kind of noticed that too, and I'm not even a weather person.
Well, all hurricanes want to go to the north and curve back, something called the Coriolis effect. It's a physics thing because the equator is wide and North Pole's narrower, so everything just has a natural turn to it. But when you have this high, it can't do that. And those years that we've had a lot of storms, like 2020, we had a lot of hurricanes in the Gulf.
Yeah.
Does the magnetic field have anything to do with storms?
I've heard theories on it, but unless it controls high pressure, low pressure, I don't think it does as much as just the overall.
Because you heard the magnetic field is weakening.
Yeah, oh yeah, and it shifts over. My mom used to talk about that. Switch poles sometimes, and
is that going to affect us? Oh, why are the storms so strong now?
Well, that's the question that is definitely legitimate. I mean, we've had a lot of rapid intensifying hurricanes in the last several years.
Do you think that's related to global warming or something else?
Well, the water temperatures. I mean, I track things called anomalies, and there's 30-year averages that we look at, and we're in a 30-year temperatures are warmer. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, if you look back at the 80s and 90s, our water temperatures weren't as warm as they are now. So definitely water temperatures are a big part of it. But
and that's certainly where it starts, these storms.
Yes, that's fuel. And another thing I noticed this year too, though, like Hurricane Aaron was a Cat 5 in the middle Atlantic, and it was only over 82 degrees of water. But we had a very stable upper atmosphere. So there's so much physics that go involved with upper level wind shear. And I always say everything's just got to stack up perfectly for these things to happen. But we do see rapid intensification a lot more than we used to see that. And these are storms that are tropical storms overnight to turn into Cat 5 hurricanes. In fact, this is the most recent one, Melissa. It broke the record, fastest wind gust. It was, under 9.
Hit Jamaica, right? Yeah,
yes.
Big one.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, they devastated that area.
And you look how close it was to Florida. I mean, it's just a little turn. We're only talking 100 miles. I mean, everybody, another thing I guess doesn't frustrate me, but everybody judges a season on impacts. And because we didn't have a lot of impacts, they think it's a bust dead season. But like
somebody got it, yeah.
Right. And we still had 3 Cat 5s and a Cat 4, just because we weren't impacted. So it only takes one to define a season.
Right.
Bottom line.
So a question I have for you, when you're looking at these storms and some of them, roll into different areas and the storm surge is so much worse on some compared to like the winds, what makes a difference between when there's going to be storm surge and when there isn't? How do you predict that? How do you talk about that?
Well, that's great. Using 2 storms. So Charlie back in 2004 hit, the Punta Gorda area. Storm surge was only 6 foot. 8 foot, maybe they thought max, and it was a Category 4. Okay, so you judge a lot of folks judge a storm based on the category strength. Category 4 is a
strong,
major hurricane. Well, then here comes Ian, 22, and the storm surge was almost triple. I mean, we had storm surge, 18 foot. But
Milton, I think we had strong storm surge too, didn't we? Have a lot in Milton? I thought we did.
Oh yeah, it devastated Manasota Key. The Inglewood area with devastating storm surge. So back to your, question, the storm surge is all dependent on the speed of a system, the size of a system, tides of a system. Katrina hit as a Cat 3. But we had 28-foot surge with Katrina, and there was a storm out in Texas. Ike was a Cat 2. I think it was 20-foot surge. So
that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you, as a weather person, predict that? Can you get a better idea on the storm surge?
But
sometimes that storm surge is more deadly than the actual winds in the storm.
Yeah, water is everything. I mean, water is everything. And we learned with Helene, Pinellas County area in Tampa Bay, this storm was 100 miles off our coast, and we had record surge here. 100 miles off our coast, which, nobody can understand that. You see that cone, it looked like it's in the middle of the Gulf heading up to the Panhandle, but yet we were completely devastated here. So
I think it's just those outer bands like pushing all
it's the
that
size.
Storm.
It just goes back to the size. I mean, lowering, deepening pressured system actually pushes the water. And basically the overall size of the system. If you look at Ian, you could put 4 Charlies in the eye of Ian. Ian was just massive. So you can't judge it on just category strength alone. It's the size, it's the speed of approach. A fast moving system doesn't have time to build that water as much as a slower moving system.
Those bigger storms that kind of sit off in the Gulf, that's really dangerous for us.
Yeah. Elena in 85 was just a tropical storm in the, Big Bend area. And we had that was our worst flooding in Tampa before Helene. And if you think about it, that was in the middle of nowhere, and it was I think it was a hurricane, but it was a weak hurricane, but it just sat there and it just spun, and that water just eventually pushes, and what I'm learning too, that these slower moving systems, the tide cycles don't get to work like they're supposed to. So you have a high tide of water coming in, and when you normally have a low tide going out, you still have winds pushing, so that low tide never escapes. Well, then here comes the next high tide, and it pushes even more. And I saw this in 2020. We had a tropical storm Ada that was 60 miles off our coast of Pinellas. And we had 500 homes flooded in the Madeira Beach, Redding Shores area. It was a tropical storm, 60 miles off our coast, and
Yeah.
it didn't even make impact. But it showed you how that perfect angle. You know, we have a shallow shelf over here too. For example, Jamaica really didn't have a lot of storm surge, even though it was one of the worst hurricanes ever. But they have a very deep ocean, and the water on a shallower shelf builds, and we have that in the Gulf. So that water just has nowhere to go but up.
Plus, our base flood elevation, like in areas like South Tampa and stuff, it's not that high.
No, 2-3 foot is
Typhoons.
yes.
Why are there so many in the Philippines?
It's a great question.
And those spin the opposite way, right? Of
Right.
a hurricane, is that what defines them?
Well, yeah, but they're this western, the Indian Ocean over there. It's and there's none down by Africa. Like I was looking at an equator map. Nothing's ever crossed the equator either. That's a fascinating thing. Like,
That is fascinating.
yeah, if you ever see every storm, nothing's passed. It's either curving to the south or curving to the north.
I wonder what's the reasoning behind that? I had no
A
idea.
big magnet.
It is it is. I mean, it is the poles. It's that Coriolis effect. But those storms that you were talking about, a lot of those times, we get Indian Ocean storms across Africa, and they end up being our Cape Verde storms that come across the Atlantic. So sometimes we can look past Africa and say, oh, there's waves over here, and they're going to come across Africa, and they end up being our trouble.
We want all that dust.
There's a lot of dust. That's another phenomenon. Yes.
So
African dust.
before the show, we were talking about cloud seeding and a law that passed. I'd love for you to talk about that, because I personally have always think, oh, that's conspiracy theory. But there's a lot of other people that would disagree with me and say, no, we've been playing with the weather since the 70s.
I know.
What's your thought on that? What do you know about the law that passed? Like, say more about that.
Well, yeah, I sit back on that because I see both sides, and both sides are so passionate that one believes there's weather manipulation, and then there's other half that doesn't. And the ones, most of your big dog meteorologists combat it. Contrails have been around forever. They're not specifically vapor trails, or they're from water and the temperature and moisture, and but then of course there's a lot of folks that believe that it's cloud seeding. So Florida did pass a law this year that weather manipulation was illegal. And some say it's because it's more of it ain't happening, so let's just make a law. And then others are saying, well, we haven't had any storms this year because they passed a law. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get some popcorn and just.
But how does that actually even play out when the storm technically is forming outside of Florida? Like, it's forming in international waters most of the time.
Yeah. Well, the one thing is, if it's on the internet, it's got to be true.
Yeah, for sure.
And with TikTok now, there's a lot people believe. I mean, there's a really good argument for anything, and
I guess, yeah. What's the argument on both sides? Give me a good little argument supporting both sides.
Well, the ones that believe in it just look up to the sky, and they see tic-tac-toe fields everywhere, and they just assume that we're being
chemtrails.
Yeah, we're being seeded, and a lot of them think that we have that right before a big storm. But then you can argue, well, that's because we have a nice high pressure setup the days before a storm, and that usually means we have storms coming. So that it's kind of like it's going to be contrails that day because of the high pressure weather pattern. But then we have bad weather afterwards. The ones that think that we're being seeded say, well, see, I told you, because we had cloud.
But they say that we don't have a certain cloud anymore when those trails are around. A certain type of cloud.
Well, it might be. I think it's because we're just in this high pressure, and there's nothing. It's beautiful blue sky. There's no moisture in the air that we normally see in the summertime.
That's the calm before the storm, right? Like all
usually,
the beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, Alabama especially. We go up there a lot, and it's where the skies are so blue. But then they also have bad weather because that's. Old timers, you can feel it in the wind.
Yes.
Like, when the winds pick up, they come from the southeast. That there's an approaching front coming.
I was just going to say that, like, as a boater, because I've spent just years on the water in the boats. And if you've spent time in the Gulf, hanging out at the islands or whatever, you can almost feel it in the air. You can tell, like, without it could look beautiful, but you just have this feeling it's time to go on in, like towards the.
Well, I see it with fish. Buddy of mine, Dylan Hubbard, down there, he told me the fish have barometric pressures in their
gills.
Yeah, and when the pressures are dropping, it usually means bad weather's coming, so they usually bite. And I have a little pond in our backyard, and I always noticed when the clouds got dark, they start jumping. And then he told me, and it made sense. The fish are feeling bad weather's on their way.
There's a lot to be said about the animals, the fish, the birds, all the things that they feel.
Pressure. They know.
Do you read the Farmer's Almanac?
I do not, but my goodness, I love the ones that do, because
my father-in-law swore by that.
They post it every day. They predicted this, and I'm like, how the heck can they predict this book that got published back in October for weather a year later?
Well, it's new every year.
Yeah, but we can't get to weather right a week from now, and I'm like, man, they're.
So at what point, Mike, did your social media page just explode? Like, was there anything that you posted or talked about that kind of like put you on the map where people know who you are?
I think I was the first to go live, long lives. I think that attracted people. Yeah,
There are so many copycats now.
Oh, sure.
Well, there's a lot of folks, talking weather. But in every big storm, I took a big jump. Irma. We had Matthew in 16 that skirted the other coast, and it didn't hit us, but it scared the heck out of everybody. Then we had Irma. And that year, every year we had something. Michael came along, and every storm just set new heights, and word of mouth. And then I think really the dumb luck of me is I treat my weather page as my personal page, and I love posting family and dogs and shenanigans and boating and
people
drinking.
People relate to that because they know who you are. It's the same thing. My girls measure the metrics on our social media, and when I post personal stuff outside of real estate stuff, people love it. They gravitate towards it.
Oh my God, totally.
Well, I told you that's why I kept watching him, because he was like the guy next door. Here he was sitting back in his house with the regular shirt on, no advertisement, nothing, just talking about it. I said, I'm going to give this guy a chance. And you proved yourself over and over again. Yeah. On your site, how many followers do you have on any given time?
You mean like watching the videos?
Yeah, well, you know, people that subscribe to you too.
Well, yeah. I tell you, the biggest shock for me and most rewarding for me has been TikTok and the younger generation.
They love TikTok. Yeah. They literally get their news and all their weather information from TikTok.
But so many kids. I mean, it's crazy. Like kids that are under 10. Come up to me and they want an autograph or a picture.
That's so cute.
So the youth that watches weather, I mean, if it was one or two, I'd say, but it's dozens I've met, dozens.
That's going to feel great. You see this 10-year-old kid.
Well, it is kids, girls, and kids going to college for meteorology. And, I was up there for FSU when we had our big snowstorm in January. And people were banging on my window, Mike, you're in town. When's it coming? When's the snow? And I was feeling all excited with them, But yeah, so Facebook started out as my number one, and I think it's like 2 million. I think I got 2.4, maybe something like that. And it's a stable. Facebook's still the king. It's a little older crowd, I think.
It definitely is.
Yeah, it's definitely your 40s. A lot of women, 60, 70% women. That's where the website's more the guys' place that don't want to be told. I think the self meteorologist like I am. I want to make my own forecast. I don't want this Yahoo telling me. And there's there's pros on each side. And I notice kids like my daughter forget about Facebook. Like the younger generation hates Facebook.
I know. They're like, you're old. Why are you on Facebook? That's what the kids say.
Oh yeah. So I had to expand out to Instagram, and
I think TikTok and Instagram, great place for
a lot of, and I've learned that with when I come across sheriffs and FHP and stuff. That I think people are bored, they can flick easy and see stuff, and they really enjoy that.
So I have a question about social media, because it happens anytime, especially you gain any traction or people are following you. There's always going to be haters.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about some of the comments you had from the haters. Right, we could plug in that Taylor Swift song right now. Tell me about that, and what's one that comes to mind, and then what do you want to say to the haters?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster for me, because I think I hit the nail on the head one time. I said it, and I'm like, if you didn't care, you wouldn't care. They're like, why do you read them? Why do you? Because I gauge, I judge.
You want to.
But I also get a feeling of what are they thinking from my posts, or what do they want more of, and or what's working, what's not working. So I read them as market research.
Right.
And I'm like, it's confusing, or they, But then you get a couple a-holes that really like to push buttons, I think, and that's what they're there for.
Yeah, the keyboard warriors.
And then once they realize they got you, I think they just keep digging for more, But some of the ones, that stand out that I do it for clicks and likes, and I wish I could tell them, man, we made it through the hump. Like I'll be doing this till I die. I don't need clicks and likes, and I wish some think that I would do this just for that, for the money, because there's a lot of them that are doing it for the money. And
well, let's face it, the money is not first. You got to put the heart and soul and sweat into it before any of the money ever comes. That's just the way it is.
Oh, it is, and I would still be doing it without.
Tell us about your Fox connection now, and also tell us about the truck that you just brought to new life.
We were going to talk about the truck too, because we had a preview of the truck before, and we'll do that. I'm going to put it on social media for you guys because you're going to ask me, why didn't you video the truck?
The truck's been amazing. There was a hurricane in Louisiana, Laura, one time, and I was sitting in front of the radar watching it come. And there's all these storm chasers out in the field, and I'm like, I was so bored. I'm like, I got to do that. So,
like, haven't you seen Twister? What's wrong with you?
Yeah, so I flew out there and rented a Jeep, and came home and wanted a Jeep. And then I said, I got this Silverado that's already lifted. It's like, I got a storm chaser. So since 2020, it just became my baby. And I've been in 6 major hurricanes with it, literally in the eye wall of 6 major hurricanes. I've been, I've been on CNN, Aaron Burnett during eye one time, and my topper flew off and busted the window, and I was live on. I was like, oh my God, it was like as it happened.
Yeah.
I've been on News Nation, Fox. I love it because when I'm on Fox, everybody's like, I'm not, I'm canceling you. I'm like, well, I'll be on CNN later. So I don't really care what network I'm on. I'm obviously, I'm just promoting weather. But yeah, I'm luckily weekly. I'm on Fox Weather now during the week, and we talk about anything and everything, and it's very enjoyable. I usually reshare it, so if you go to the pages, you'll see this week's. I just did one.
So well, congratulations for building up such a great audience, and
thank you.
Getting the invitation on the major networks. That's certainly a compliment to you and the work you're doing.
Well, and going back to the haters, they'll go on there and basically discredit them. Like, why are you listening to this guy? He's not even a Met. I've made it very clear from day one, and when things really get serious in the hurricane season, I always open up every show. Listen, I'm not a meteorologist. Get all your information from National Weather Service Hurricane Center.
But the circles are small, and you're friends with those people.
Well, I am, and they're cool. They don't give me a hard time. But
what about the law enforcement when you're running around with your truck?
Oh, I love them. I've been pulled over.
I know. I see some of these. I follow some of these storm chasers on YouTube when there's a storm. And some of these guys drive 90 miles an hour. The road is completely wet. There's passing vehicles because here comes the tornado.
Yeah, they got in trouble last night. There was a real famous one that ran a bunch of red lights, and they're blasting them online because it's on camera. You're streaming live, I'm fortunate because I think, meeting a lot of, law enforcement and first responders, they know me, and I got a really good reputation with the FDEM now, the state of Florida, and Kevin Guthrie. So I do a lot of work with Tallahassee and do a lot of one-on-one videos with them. So I think I would get a pass, hopefully,
Yeah.
I have been caught speeding twice, FHP. I'll never forget one time, I'm just not paying attention. He pulled me over. He goes, I knew it was you, Mike. He goes, and I appreciate what you do, but you're going kind of fast with telephone poles on the ground.
Slow your butt down.
And I'm driving over telephone lines after Helene, and he was cool. And then one time on 19 too, he's like, I knew you'd be going by me, Mike. He said, but keep it down a little bit.
Probably wouldn't do it in Georgia. I'm just saying. Probably would not do it in Georgia.
Are you by yourself in this vehicle? Do you have somebody?
Most of the time, yeah. I've taken friends. Both of them, I don't think are ever going out again, honestly.
What does your wife think about you? Does she think you're crazy doing this? She ever go with you?
She gets numb to it. It's weird.
Like, whatever.
I was in this storm in Louisiana one time, and I had Facebook Live, and it was happening. Like, I had 100,000 people watching. And there were people eating popcorn. I felt like I was on a reality TV show. And somebody called Julie, and she's like, no, she was watching General Hospital. Like, she did.
She had no effect to the weather.
I mean, my daughter, I think, secretly is a big fan because she'll go on my older one, And then my youngest one, Sarah's got Down syndrome, and she's my biggest fan. I mean, she'll always text and call in the mornings. In fact, I yelled at my 19-year-old today. I'm like, Sarah calls and texts me every day. I don't know why you only text me when you want something. But
that's how kids are.
I know, but I'll be in the middle of the storm, and here comes my little hearts that Sarah sends me, So it's
well,
cool.
I mean, it's the kids are that way. I mean, I remember when I started doing radio, everybody thought that was so cool. My friends' kids thought it was so cool, and my kids were like, whatever, like just totally unaffected. Your kid, we talked about that, kind of the same thing. They're just like, whatever.
Let me ask you, and I thought of this the other day when I looked at my grass. You have no water.
Oh my God, the water, it's unbelievable. We're in a bad drought.
We needed a soft hurricane, an easy one to just bring some rain.
Well, and you think about Milton last year, we got blasted with rain, and here we are in a drought, It goes back to this
question. You're going to be reporting fires.
Oh, we are. No, we're in a D4 now in the Panhandle, which is the worst drought levels that we can get, and it's only going to get worse. There's nothing coming, and it's going back to the question you asked of why our hurricane season was so odd this year. That high pressure slid a little bit to the east, and when all these storms turned, we had a cold front, and all that East Coast moisture. The east side of Florida is 20 inches over. Like the Carolinas and Georgias are way over water. You go 100 miles to us, up through Georgia and Alabama, that same circular motion that I show around that high is non-existent. That's dry air that came around. So just 100-mile shift. We're from over water to needing water, and it's nuts to see that. But yeah, you're right. We're going to be going in the drought season, I think, and it's going to be bad. We've had fires in the 90s in Florida that were historic, and Mother Nature repeats herself. It's unfortunate, but we're bound to have another one of those episodes, and it could be what we're looking at.
It's funny. I love the haters. You got to talk about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I remember when I started doing radio, people liked it. They liked the content. Even you said, Pat, of all the shows you hosted, mine was good. The content was really engaging and stuff. I had a guy one time that called. He left a message on our off-air number telling me about how bad the show was and how I could never listen to it again and all this stuff. Well, I called him back like more than once because, it tracks their number. So I called him and I said, oh, I'd love to hear more about that. Can you tell me what part about the show you don't like or I could make better? He just never called me back.
Well, there you go. I mean, and I tell you, Drew hit the nail on the head the other day. We were talking about haters, Drew Garabo, and he's right. I was guilty of this, but we scroll past hundreds of positive.
Yeah.
And then we stop at that one, and that's all we think about. And you know what? It's rude because we'll usually respond to that negative one.
Yeah.
And you just ignore 99 positive ones.
Right.
And then I'm like, they know you're reading it. Because you just responded.
Well, and the Facebook algorithm really just kind of jacks what you can see and not see, and that part I think is a little irritating. But
yeah, so I try to read the positives. And when I meet people too, the other thing I have to remind myself is I meet so many people in person now. Never met a bad fan, So I got to stop letting. Some people are just angry.
There's always going to be haters, always. Just people that are never happy in life with anything.
Oh, well, I know, Katrina, you said you don't watch television or anything, but for next year, this is the guy you got to follow.
Watch it for sure.
Because he's put me at ease a few times. Or I said, okay, we need to start bringing in patio furniture.
We're sharing some followers. I have a pretty good following myself, so we'll definitely collaborate. I can't wait to post it. And
I feel, I think being a Floridian helps.
Yes.
I'm pretty... I've changed. I used to be the one Debbie Downer telling everybody, not to evacuate and this and that. Now I'm the Debbie Downer because I'll be the guy with the bullhorn telling you to evacuate because they know
from your truck.
Yeah,
or my truck, or just or they judge when I send my family out of town. So they know I'm not going to give you a lot of hype, and people hate hype, and I think
people are over it.
Oh, they are, and for me, if there was a marketing strategy for me, it's stay away from adjectives. Like weather loves adjectives. Everything's catastrophic, or Hurricane Aaron this year, for example, it was a Cat 5, and the 5-day cone looked like it was coming right towards Florida, but every single model had it turning. Never going to be a chance of hitting Florida, but I think the media waited too long to let people know it's going to curve because there was headlines like, Hurricane Aaron barreling towards Florida, or Florida's eyeing the approaching hurricane. They twisted enough that it panics people,
Well, people are looking. It's sad that the media has gone to a place of, instead of journalism, they're reporting based on, trying to get people to subscribe or like or engage, and it's sad. Yeah, but it's the culture we live in, and the younger generation is super immune to it. They're just like, yeah, we're not listening to your BS.
Pretty much, and I think that's why they're going to TikTok and they're looking for new influencers, and unfortunately, there's bad new influencers that are spewing, wrong information. But the adjectives for me, I think people, like you said, are tired of it.
The good news about that is there's a track record, right? So like on Tampa Home Talk all the time, remember how much I would predict the market, Pat, and talk about what kind of market we're in, what the absorption rate is, and what we're doing. And I'm like, hey, the good news is it's all recorded. It's all on a podcast, so you can go up and double check me, But my predictions were pretty spot on, I think, with the housing market. They have been.
Good for you, yeah.
But it's data. I don't give any information. Everything I give is based on data and information. And it's, I say that numbers and data tell a story.
I want you, Katrina, to tell me the humidity level today. And I want you to tell me if a buyer's or a seller's market. Let's see if you can get this right. Either one of you. Do your opposite
I
jobs.
could not answer anything about the humidity at all. My hair's not as frizzy. There's some.
Well,
I can tell.
there's a humidity meter based on hair. Dew point is so dew point if it's 65 or higher, it's miserable. I'll just tell you that. That's the living in Florida.
The humidity.
70 is awful. Humidity can be high and still be comfortable.
It's like some of those Gasparillas, man, when we're sweating under our garb.
No, do you think it's a buyer's or seller's market?
I would say
that's a trick question. That's not fair.
I'd say it's a seller's market.
So it's you're really close, and
sit on a market.
No. The thing about real estate is it's so hyper local, right? So you can pull one neighborhood compared to a different one, and you'll get a different set of data. Then you have like the overall Tampa Bay region, which is not the same thing, and then you could slice that down even further between single family homes and condos, and those will definitely tell you a different story because of Senate Bill 4D. But essentially, we are in a balanced market, which is we follow the absorption rate, so a supply and demand number of months supply of homes. 0 to 6 months is a seller's market. 6 to 12 is a balanced market. Anything over 12 is a buyer's market. So some neighborhoods, we're still a seller's market. We have an absorption rate that might be 3 or 4 months, 5, maybe 6. Once we hit that 6-month mark, we're considered a balanced market. But we've been in an extreme seller's market for so long that 95% of the agents selling right now don't even know how to sell real estate in a market like this. So I get 1 to 2 calls a week from people saying, hey, my house is on the market. It's been on the market. We've had showings, no offers, or it didn't sell. What's wrong? And I can go to a walkthrough on the house and tell them within 5 minutes what's wrong and put together a whole plan to sell it.
Are we going to have a cold winter?
I thought we were until I've been looking at some long range models. So if I had to guess, I'd say no. We're in a La Nina. Have you heard of the thing?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, La Nina, and it's we're gonna be in the 80s the first week of December, 85. So
how about late January? Can you predict that far out?
Please, I was going to bring that up because my son's in the Air Force.
Gasparilla.
No, I don't care about that. My son's in the Air Force, and he's got to drive from from Kansas City to Tacoma in February.
Yeah. Well,
and I have to go with him.
North of Florida, it's different. There's storms. Severe storms are more frequent in El Niño north of the peninsula. Now, the Panhandle could have some severe weather, but we get this jet stream that's a little bit higher to the north, which creates a lot more warm, dry air in the south. But that enables a lot of, we were talking about Reed Timmer earlier. We had a tornado outbreak yesterday in Houston. So the stormy weather in the middle part of the U.S. and then a wet, more wintry weather north, like Chicago, the areas that don't normally get them. But we can always get a random cold front, like we just had a couple weeks ago. We were in the 30s down here. But the overall pattern signals a normal winter in the middle, more of an extreme winter to the north, and more drier, warmer, stormier here for us in the south.
So let's wrap up talking about the truck, shall we, Pat?
The truck
Mike gave us a great tour of the truck. So we'll talk about what we saw and what we noticed. So first of all, you got little stickers on the back with all the storms that you and your truck have been in with the
143 stickers back there. I counted.
No, but there's a lot. What else? Some other really cool things.
Well, I got to tell you, and I watched this video. What I liked, because I used to drive the Bill Curry van on the interstate, and I always had those wires sticking in the door. And one of the things you said, no more wires coming in the door.
Yeah, well, I think that's why these guys called me. And I love NASCAR, and Whelan's really big with NASCAR, and these guys are like, we got to do better. We got to get him hooked up, But lighting's huge. I mean, I've run across accidents in first responders needed me to help direct light. I've had to help chainsaws on the Interstate 10 in the past with lighting.
You need a push bumper.
That's a big deal.
Sort of got one.
He's got that cattle thing on the front.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll work.
Bull horns on there. I use it. I got a pillow in the back, and it's a home away from home.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's my little. I feel so safe in there.
How high is the truck? What's a lift kit?
My wife can't. She's 5'3". She needs a ladder. So, I mean, I don't know. I bought it that way. It's it's got 28, I think, on it. I got it.
You don't have your name on the door or anything, do you?
No. I usually put a magnet on the side. Like with my logo on it.
So talk about the equipment that someone just donated to you. Would love to give them a shout out. I'm sure they would appreciate that.
Whelan does a lot of lighting, and there's JCO Corporation in Orlando. They deck out all the sheriffs in the southeast and tow trucks and the professionalism. I thought I was good, but these guys actually.
They're like, no, let me fix you.
Every wire's hidden. There's 30 buttons. I mean, it's like. I mean, it's Back to the Future stuff.
It is quite a contraption. You've got a lot of stuff in there. You go in there and it's pretty overwhelming. Between all of the monitors that are up and the dashboards and the cameras and the buttons, there's a lot.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's like I said. I mean, every kid, big boys and their toys, you know. But I got radios in there. I got satellite. I have two Starlinks. And it's helped. I mean,
Wait, you have two, so if one gets ripped off, you still have a Starlink.
Oh yeah, I have a backup. But during Hurricane Helene, the FirstNet network went down, and the FHP was there, and we were in Keaton Island or Keaton Beach, where the worst storm surge was, and they were trying to get a drone footage to Tallahassee, but they had no network, and I felt so good because I had Starlink and they didn't. So all these FHP guys hurtled around my truck. And then the Polk County sheriffs came over because every time there's a storm, they'll relieve the local sheriff's department. Yes. They'll bring another one. So Polk County guys came up and they were all teaching each other how to Wi-Fi call because nobody could call home to let their wives know they were okay. So they're like, oh, you know, all these rednecks from Polk County, you know, they're like Wi-Fi calling, you know, and they're like, you got to hit this. But they were all using my Starlink, and I felt good. I'm like, yeah, it's awesome.
That's who we have to have on as Sheriff Grady Jones.
Yes.
Oh, hey, America's Sheriff.
I love that guy.
I just saw an interview with him and DeSantis. It was pretty fascinating. He's a good old boy from Polk County.
Yeah. Well, I got a donkey horn on mine. There's a funny story about that. So they I got my, signature horn on there that people know I'm coming.
You know what you got to do, and we have the connections. You got to be in the parade.
Yes, I've been in a couple.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been
in Oldsmar, I'm sure.
Oldsmar, yeah, I was Fort Myers last year. Holy cow, that was huge.
We'll take you to the best crew.
I've been on a float. One of my friends, you mentioned Gasparilla, so that was pretty neat.
Which one did you go on? Which?
They're crew of Shasta up there in Port Richey area.
Oh yeah, Chasco Fiesta.
Shasta guys, yeah, they're all like
Gasparilla's huge.
They used to have a bowl. They used to have a signature bowl.
I'm going to talk to Captain Billy Blacktoes and tell him we're going to have Mike the Weatherman on as our guest this year.
Yeah, I
think you would love that. You'd have so much fun hanging out.
Yeah, we threw beads and
you won't recognize any of us. You'll be like, "That's you. You're the same person I was sitting in the studio with." But you'll have fun.
It's a good time. Well, and I do a lot of expos now and touch of trucks and a lot of Great American teaching. So
I was just going to say,
probably fascinated with.
Yeah, well, and that's what's cool about a truck because I mean, even though there's no storms, it's kind of neat to see it. And know that that's been in a hurricane. And they can see the videos online.
Do you have some of the kids ask you fascinating questions? You're like, wow, why'd you think about that?
Well, it's fascinating to me that they are engaged with weather, that they find it fascinating. So that's good.
You know what you got to do is you got to carry a tree branch with you, just about, a smaller one. And when you go to school with the kids, stick it in the side of the truck and say, oh, I forgot that one from the last hurricane.
He's such a joker. He definitely would do that.
Yeah.
Well, we'll give you guys a little tour. I'll do a little live stream and we'll show the listeners around. And then certainly this podcast will be available on any player of your choice.
Tell us where they can find you. Give us everything you have out there.
Yeah. The magic of Google is if you just type Mike's, it'll pop up, but Facebook.
Mike's.
Yeah, it'll Mike's weather
Mike's
page.
Pies?
No, Mike's weather page, not Mike's hard lemonade or Mike's Pies.
Depends on how your algorithms are.
We were at the Lightning game. They had Mike's mustard last night. I was laughing at it. But it's Mike's weather page. It's the website spaghettymodels.com or Mike's weather page, and then Facebook, TikTok, and
we'll put all the links to like in the show. We'll put them all in there. So
and I like X. I mean, I don't know if y'all X is good for like news. Like if you want weather data.
Old Twitter.
Yeah, old
used
Twitter.
To be Twitter. Yeah.
So I still use that quite a bit. That's usually my go-to to really get a gut of like if anything's happening.
A lot of the journalists live there. They see that stuff first. So X has always been like on it first. So, well, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show. It's been a lot of fun. And if you have time to come back in storm season, which you probably won't, totally fine. But maybe we'll do a little call-in or a snippet. But
anytime.
It's been great to have you. Thanks for being my guest.
Thank you.
This is Tampa Home Talk. I have Mike with Mike's weather page, Mike Boylan. And I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. This is Tampa Home Talk. Remember, love where you live or we're going to fix it. Welcome home.